All right, welcome to the Scholar Brewing channel. Today we are making an American Porter. American Porter is one of my favorite styles because it really showcases like the maltiness of your malt profile. It's big, it's sweet. It's a great beer for wintertime here in Southern California. Legend has it that the porter is so named because those guys in old-timey times they used to load the train, they called those guys porters. And you know, when you're loading trains, you need fortification of mind. And apparently those guys used to drink the porters. The porter has high nutritional value, so you can drink it for breakfast. All right, so malt bill that we got going on today: 14 pounds of 2-row, 4 pounds of Munich malt, 2 pounds Crystal 40, 1 pound black patent, 1 pound chocolate malt, and let's get at it. All right, grain's done milling, so I'm going to turn my pump on to start heating up my mash tun. All right, so can't forget that. Beautiful freshly milled grain here going into the mash tun. I just like to dump it all in. Let that water do the work. And then I can do the work of making sure there are no dough balls with this mash tun. Alright, so I'm going to check my temperature where I am right now. Okay, so I'm at 144 right now, so I have room for some more water to increase that temperature. So I'm going to keep stirring until it gets up to where I want it to be. Let's check her out. It's sitting right around 150, so it's getting there. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds, give it a little stir. You know what? Maybe it would be easier and more efficient if I just measured out my hot water, but I don't want to do that. I like to have control, change things if I want to. And you know what? I always say, brewing is more of an art than a science anyway. But science is more of an art than a science too, so. Sitting at 147, 148, and add some more hot water to get us up to 152. All right, I'm sitting right at 152. This is perfect. Right when you get up to your mash temperature, you start to notice that a lot of proteins are being released and you get this nice foamy top. You can kind of get a sense of what the malt profile in your finished beer is going to be. This is always an exciting part. All right, we're right at 152. So I'm going to go ahead and close the lid here on this mash tun, put my mash paddle aside, and let this sit to convert those carbohydrates from the grains into simple sugars. Let the enzymes do their magic of breaking down that stuff and making some nice, yummy, fermentable sugar. I like to let it sit for a full hour. In the meantime, while I'm waiting for my grains to convert my mash, I'm going to go ahead and start this strike water up again after having added the cold water that I stored up in the hot liquor tank so that I can heat it up to mash out temperature and then use that hot water from the hot liquor tank after I pump it back up to rinse my grains again. Okay, so at this point my mash is finished. Sitting for an hour. All my sugars have been converted into a nice sticky sweet, what's gonna soon be wort. Sparge water has come up to temperature, so what I'm gonna do for a mash out is I'm gonna pump some of this sparge water up into my mash tun here and hopefully raise my temperatures to mash out temperature about 168 degrees. So this water's coming out at about 190 degrees, okay? So hopefully once this gets up to 168, I'm gonna let it do a little mash out rest, 10 minutes or so. I'm not sure why mash out is necessary. I hear some people say it's necessary, some people say it's not. I've noticed that I get better efficiency when I mash out, so I like to do it. So we have reached 168 degrees. That is a good mash out temperature. So I'm going to let it sit here for just a moment at 168 degrees. And while that sits for a moment, what I'm going to do is pump all that hot water that's still in the kettle up into this hot liquor tank here. Okay? And then this hot liquor tank here is what I'm going to use to do my sparge. So all this hot water down in this kettle there is going to come up into this hot liquor tank. flow out the bottom of the hot liquor tank through this little system, and that's what's going to sparge our mash there. So that's how we're going to rinse those sugars out and get them into our kettle and then get onto the boil. Sparge tool here. It's like a 50-cent handy piece of equipment and more beer there. So that goes right on the end of this little silicone tubing, which we'll spray in there. I've got my same hose that was coming out of my kettle that I'm going to connect here to the bottom of my mash tun underneath the false bottom. I'm going to prime this pump. Here's my own special way of priming the pump. I turn off my ball valve. I leave that connected, right? Because that's going to the same place it's coming in to recirculate. Just pinch this guy off, hold it up just like this, so I can hold it a little bit higher to where the top of the liquid is there. I turn this on, and just get all the air out of there, slowly moving it down. And see, if I take it down this way, liquid's gonna start coming out of it. So I just pinch it, connect it to that pump again, let it go. And now we got nice swirl flowing out of the bottom of that mash tun. Have that on about halfway. Turn my pump on. And now I'm recirculating. So while this thing recirculates, what I like to do is make sure it's not moving too fast, because your grain bed, if it's moving fast through, is going to get real compacted, and you're going to end up with a stuck sparge. It's hard to move liquid through. So I like to go a little bit slow and rake sort of the top of the grain bed there. If you rake the top of the grain bed, you can keep it kind of fluffy. And if you keep it fluffy, it'll flow through real nicely. I've had enough stuck sparges to know that that's a no bueno. Not a fun experience. You kind of have to start over, do your recirculation again. But this one, we're going to try to avoid that. So it feels nice and fluffy down there. We're going to let that go for a minute, just until I have no specks in the wort that's coming out here. All right, so this thing's been recirculating for about 5 minutes now. It's going actually a little bit faster than I would like it to, and the grain bed's not quite as fluffy as I'd like it to be. Lower and slower is always better. But I'm gonna go ahead and check to see what the clarity of this wort. And so basically what you want is a wort without any specks in it. And this one's hard to see because it's so darn dark, but I like to put it up against the light. Take a look there. Yeah, and it looks pretty good actually. So I think I'm probably gonna start my sparge here, draining this off into the kettle. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this pump off. Okay, now it stopped circulating. I'm gonna close my ball valves on my pump, and I'm gonna just pinch the one here that's coming from my mash tun into that pump, and I'm gonna put it into this little input that I have here in the kettle. It's actually a little input that I use for a whirlpool arm. So now it's just going from the bottom of my grain bed in my mash tun straight into the bottom of my kettle. I'll show you there. As the level of water in the mash tun gets lower, I sparge onto the top of it with the hot water that's stored up here in the hot liquor tank. Okay, and right now it's sitting at about 150 degrees, just because that's what it dropped down to after I pumped it up from the kettle. So as it drops down, I'm gonna rinse it out, clearing that sugary wort through this grain bed to hopefully get as much sugar out of this as possible. I'm also gonna kind of rake the top of the grain bed. I don't know if it really works or anything, but it feels like it rinses all the sugar out and gets it nice and clean throughout. All right, so my kettle is just about right where I want it to be. So what I'm gonna do just after this is I'm gonna take this hose off the top of my kettle and just let any excess water drain out so that I can take the grain out to the old compost bin. All right, so I've got my boil kind of starting here. We're gonna keep a close eye on it to watch that boil over. When the boil over starts, turn down the temperature to stop that hot break. And that actually helps clear the proteins out. And I assume it helps them sort of like bind together, I don't know. All right, now that we've got a nice rigorous boil going, I'm gonna start my first hop addition for bittering, which is 2 ounces of Cascade. I'm just gonna toss it in that hop spider there. Very nice. It smells hoppy. Now I'm hoppy. 10 minutes left to our boil, so I'm gonna add my 2 10-minute hop additions. 2 ounces Willamette, 2 ounces Goldings,
and then I'm gonna hook up my hoses to get ready to sanitize my plate chiller by running hot water through the plate chiller and whirlpooling back into the kettle hose. I do this for about 10 minutes before ending the boil.
First prime the pump. Pump to plate chiller. All right, so cattle the pump, pumped plate chiller, return through the whirlpool arm. I'm gonna go ahead and open that pump up, start the pump. There we go. Traveling nicely through there. Check it out. About 5 minutes left in the boil. I'm also gonna add a Worth lock tab. All right, so the boil's finished. I'm gonna go ahead and start my water and turn my fire off here. Start cooling this sucker down. Get ready to pitch some yeast. It's a good time to sanitize the old fermenter that I'm gonna use. Along with anything else that's gonna come into contact with the unfermented wort. That way we don't have any nasty little buggers in there. So I just swish that all around in there. And so far that has been sufficient. Airlock. And I always like to throw a funnel in there just in case I end up using it for when I pitch my yeast. Also, if you're using one of these guys, you gotta sanitize the lid. Just pour your sanitizer all around there. Make sure your seal's all lined up. Get that thing on. Now, that is all sanitized. Grab this little lid here. Stick that on the top of the fermenter until I'm ready to rack my beer into there. I am going to cool this thing down to about 80 degrees before I put it into the fermenter, because by the time I actually pump it into the fermenter, it'll be down about 75, which seems to be a good temperature for me to pitch my yeast, which I've had going in the starter all night long.
For this beer, I'm using a repitch of White Labs California 5 Ale yeast. I'll have to do another video on how to do that. I'll make sure to aerate this thing by shaking it for about a minute and set my temperature controller around 66 to 70 degrees and wait.
After about a week, I reached my final gravity of 1.010. So I crash cooled to 33 degrees, pulled the fermenter out of the fridge, and drained into 2 kegs. Now I'll force carbonate at about 35 PSI over 24 hours before tasting. All right, so beer's been sitting in this chest freezer here at about 33 degrees for 2 days at about 35 PSI. It's been carbonated, and now we're gonna drink it. We're gonna give it a try here. And I got my friend and business partner, Justin, here to help me out with tasting.
And remind me, what are we drinking here?
This is an American porter that was just finished today. All right, cheers.
It's drinkable.
Oh, good. Drinkable's good, because not drinkable is
that would be
not
a problem.
positive. I'm getting a little chocolatey on the nose, some vanilla, maybe a little
slight nuttiness to it.
Yeah, a little bit
Very,
nutty.
very slight.
It's nice and malty. It's round. It's sweet, almost a little sweet. I think that it's like a nutty sweetness, right, that you're getting.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm getting there too. All right. Cheers.
Good beer.